Sorry guys, I'm a bit late. My previous call got extended.
No worries.
Hi, Nikhil. How are you doing?
Hi mom, good evening. How are you?
Wonderful. And it's great seeing you.
Yes mom. The same here, mom. Great hearing you. I can't see you, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm traveling right now back home.
Oh, okay.
So bandwidth won't be great with phones. So that's why I'm not. So, anyways, virtual hi. It's so great seeing you after so many years.
Yes, I also see it, Mona mom.
Yeah, we met you a couple of years back also. You came for that
Yeah, yeah,
site work. Yeah.
yeah,
Hi
yeah.
Nikhil,
So,
how are you?
I'm good, ma'am. I'm good. I'm मेरे को अभी भी लग रहा है कि एकदम से मैं ऑपरेशनल रिसर्च की बुक्स निकाल लूं. That
बिल्कुल निकाल लो. Nice to see you. Seriously, when they told me that you are coming, I thought, okay, wow, our student is coming to. मतलब he's like a resource person. That's really good. I
thank
hope
you,
you are
ma'am.
doing well.
in
Hope you are
fact,
doing well.
this was the
Sorry.
reason, Mona ma'am. We asked him, why not utilize our own created resources as a resource person? So that was the very idea of calling Nikhil. All right, so Nikhil, we formally welcome you. And now Mohak from Grandier team will take over the proceedings. All the best, Mohak. And we, look forward to hearing a great lecture from you, Nikhil.
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll try to keep it more interactive, like to
Yeah,
answer your
wonderful.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Sushmita ma'am, for your words. A very good evening, everyone. Grandeur, in association with IIC SSCBS, would like to welcome you all for the session of Problem Solving and Ideation Challenge. As well, said by the Albert Einstein, we cannot solve our all problems with the same level of thinking that created them. We always need to reiterate and think a different thing. So, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Nikhil Chainani. He is a social entrepreneur and a bright student. He is the founder of Perspectivo, an AI-based tech startup that provides smart management tools. And he is also a co-founder of Suitable Power of AI. We feel proud to say that he is an SSCBS alumnus of 2016 batch. Without any further delays, I would like to call him to start the wonderful session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So guys, I'll try to keep it as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, just shoot at me. Before that, I'll just give you a quick intro, just to set some background. So I have been a graduate of our college. I graduated from the class of 2016. So 2013 to 16, I studied in SSCBS. And post which I went into Nomura, I was into the investment banking team. And there I used to work with the London team. So I worked with the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, in the TMT, technology, media, and telecom sectors, and predominantly looked at the M&A division. So mergers and acquisitions was the sector that I focused on. Uh, I was also the part of their recruitment team. So Nomura, in all good consulting and finance organizations, the HR is just for sourcing the candidates, but the final decision is taken by the team on the floor. So we were responsible for screening resumes, taking interviews, and I took around 500 interviews in my tenure at Nomura and interviewed people from IITs, IIMs, NSITs, SSCBS, DU colleges, Oxford, Stanford, Cambridge, UK, US divisions. So the idea was that my job was to basically hire people and train them for the first year, and then divide them in different teams. Apart from doing the investment banking job that I was supposed to do. So post which I started Perspectivo, and I'll tell you how, like, talking about problems. One of the biggest problems that I used to face there was that I was in charge of screening resumes. So a lot of people face this problem of their resume not getting shortlisted. So it was like my job to score resumes and call people for interviews. So at and I used to work with the London team, but I wasn't posted in Mumbai, so my work hours used to be very bad. I used to get, like, let's say, pile of, so London, if you know, is 5.5 hours behind India. So I used to get like work till 2 3 in the morning, and then I used to used to get a pile of 1,000 resumes to assess and then call them for interviews the next day. So it was really a pain point for me. And when I used to take interviews, I was really disappointed the kind of technical know-how that people had. So people joined IB just for the glamour of it, without realizing that why you should go for investment banking. And Nomura also blacklisted a lot of colleges during that tenure because we were very unhappy with the kind of candidates we were getting. So that was a major pain point for me. So resume scoring and taking people's interview was something that was a problem for me per se. Am I have faced that problem, and I know it's a very, we live in the 21st century, and someone had to manually score resumes. It was not, I was not happy with that. So with that idea, I started Perspectivo. The idea was to make a tool which helps people uh, get interview training from industry experts, and also software for HRs to remove the burden of scoring resumes and filtering candidates. So a Perspectivo was that idea to automate the hiring process for enterprises. We got our first check from our college. The first net lesson that I learned there was referrals and how important they are in hiring and in general in life. So I approached Poonam ma'am, and Poonam ma'am said that our college was setting up an incubation cell. 2017, I think we set up Saif, and I think we were the first funded company from Saif. So we got a small check of around 20 lakhs from Sukhdev, and we started building our team. Post which we have had quite a few rounds of funding after that, and we grew. And then after in 2020, we also launched another division of Perspective called Suitable AI. It's a tool that focuses on getting intros, like in companies. If you want to reach out to good candidates, they are in your networks of your employees. So what Suitable does, it lets you bring all your social contacts at one place and help recruiters scout the right talent from that network and request intros to get the right candidates. So Suitable currently is a US company. So we then launched it in the United States. It's a subsidiary of Perspectivo, and we sell to the US customers there. We also have Indian clients like FamPay, Cred, Dineout, Lenscard. These are a few customers in India. And a lot of my journey is about problem solving. That's what a life of an entrepreneur is, to be honest. And you face a lot of problems and you solve it, and the best ideas usually come while you are solving these problems. So this has been my journey so far. So if you have any questions regarding startup interviews, resume, problem solving, start throwing those to me. And in the meanwhile, I'll also start sharing about the experiences that I've had. So I think that will be a better way, and this has been my journey so far. Yeah. Try to make it as interactive as possible, guys. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. So that's the modus operandi of today's session. Yeah.
So hi Nikhil, it's Aditya. So you
Yeah.
said that you were funded, your initial funding was funded by SSCBS itself for like
Mm,
20 lakhs.
mm.
So does SSCBS has like equity in your company or they just
Of course, any sort of funding in a startup is done on an equity basis until it's a debt round. So typically, there are two ways to raise money from the market. First is a debt, which is a loan which you can take. Second is equity. Then there are convertible notes. So you take debt today, and if you're not able to repay that debt, you can convert it into equity, and vice versa. You can take equity today, and in a certain tenure, if you're able to repay the money, you take it. You can convert it to debt and repay the money. So with startups, usually what happens, the valuation depends on the kind of money that you raise apart from your profitability. So it makes sense to take money via the equity route. So yeah, it Saif does have equity in my company. Yeah. Anyone else has any questions? Okay, so just to give a line of thought before maybe a few of you have any questions. So the topic for today was problem solving, right? So and ideation. So the idea was that a lot of founders and a lot of successful startups are formed when you start solving problems of your own. Like ऐसे कोई आप एक दिन बैठोगे on a in a cafe and think about a startup idea, that's not how it works. That's not how good startup ideas come. The best ideas come from your own problem. If you're facing a problem of your own, and if you are, you know, because that gives you some sort of domain expertise in that particular problem. So once you try to try to ideate via a problem, you will come to better ideas. For example, Airbnb, it's a good case study. Airbnb was formed because the founders themselves, faced the problem of staying in a. They went to attend a conference in California and they had a problem to find a rented space where they could stay. So they said that, okay, can we stay at a friend's place and give him some money? So that's how staying at someone else's place became an idea and Airbnb was formed. Also, initially the ideas that come to you might be very counterintuitive. Can anyone explain the meaning of the word counterintuitive? uh, can you tell me what the meaning of the word counterintuitive is? Anyone? Come on, guys, I'm talking to CBS crowd. Yeah, paradoxical, that's a good answer. Anyone else? So okay, I'll tell you. Counterintuitive means that, for example, everyone is very health conscious these days, right? So health tech startups were funded in India, a lot of them. People were funding health, they were promoting healthy food. But what is counterintuitive? When you talk about the business side of it, the most money is made by fast food joints in the food industry. So although being healthy is good for you, but from a business point of view, if you're a health startup or if you have healthy products, from an investment point of view, you might not get enough money or enough funding because the market is governed and people buy more of unhealthy products, right? So this is a very small counterintuitive insight that I've shared you, and there are a lot of examples of it. So the idea is that do not seek validation initially when you are thinking of an idea, or when you're trying to solve a problem, because the problem per se, once you are facing it, the solution might be very counterintuitive to what the actual solution might feel like it, right? So that's one of the biggest learnings that I've learned from my experience, that sometimes we sit in a room and we think that ye feature launch karte and this will be very good, but that doesn't work. At least in the Indian context, the market is really counterintuitive. It is very counterintuitive. So the way of thinking about good startup ideas is just to think counterintuitively since the beginning. If you are in college and you're facing a particular problem, the idea is to think of the best solution, which might not be acceptable initially. Everyone laughed when Airbnb came. Everyone laughed when Uber came. Everyone said that why will I be sitting in a cab with a stranger who I don't know? But people went on, sitting there. Whereas some ideas which are very good on paper might not be very good in terms of implementing. So that's that kind of is a learning that I wanted to share with you, and that's a good line of thought. If you want to ask any questions regarding that, please ask. Guys, are you really understanding what I'm saying? Because I don't know. I am not used to talking to a mute audience. Like, you want to participate in this discussion, that will be much more fruitful. Yeah.
Guys, if you have any question, do ask him, or you can also write the question in the chat box. I will read it out for you.
Yeah. Any questions regarding these topics you might have, please ask.
Nick, as you said, the Indian market is quite counterintuitive. So how can we actually judge the Indian market before launching a product or a service?
Yeah, so there's a very there are various processes and steps in productizing a particular idea. Now, the first step is to get an idea per se. So once you get an idea, the best validation is if you have faced that problem yourself. If every day you face that problem, if that problem is really, really painful to you, that is one of the biggest validations. Second is to convert that idea into a business. A lot of people, who start ideas have no clue on how to make money out of it. See, startups might seem very glamorous, but when you have, $1 million funding from investors and they sit on your head, they ask you, are you making money out of it, right? So प्रोडक्टाइजिंग एन आइडिया. सो आइडिया के 3 स्टेजेस होते हैं. एक हो गया आपका आइडिया आ गया. सेकेंड इज प्रोडक्टाइजिंग इट. प्रोडक्टाइजिंग का मतलब होता है कि like let's say it's a software product, like you want to make a matchmaking software. So supply side क्या होगी, demand side क्या होगी, tech कैसा होगा, will it be scalable? Scalability is a big criteria. अगर आज मैं एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व एक जने के लिए कर रहा हूँ, क्या ये प्रोडक्ट स्केलेबल है, क्या ये सेम प्रॉब्लम में एट अ simultaneous point of time can I solve it for tens and thousands of users? If that is the kind of business that you are in, and that's where tech helps, that's why tech enabled businesses are considered more scalable. uh, that becomes more of a scalable, productizable idea. And the third step is making a business out of it. So the idea is that before you launch an actual feature, give it, this is called beta testing. ये एक term होता है हमारे startups में which we use, which is called beta testing. You give your product to a closed group of users. Let's say you launch a product for college students, right? You think that taking notes in a live video class is a bit of a trouble. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. That's not even an idea. Or let's say you face a problem of, you know, एग्जाम से पहले मेरे को फोटोकॉपी की दुकान पे बहुत लंबा खड़ा होना पड़ता है, एंड देयरफॉर यू वांट टू मेक एन ऐप where all the notes are there and which you can share before an exam. So let's say you come up with something like this, right? The best way to validate is to give it to at least, you know, 100 200 people in your own community. This is called beta testing. And this kind of actually helps you in figuring out what the flaws of the product are, whether people are actually using it, whether people are willing to pay for it. What, so there's a very famous saying that you have a big house you want to construct and there are lots of pipes and you're trying to figure out that कौन सी pipe में leakage है, right? So the best way to do it is not to just, you know, ask each and everyone. The best way to just make the water flow, and then you will get to know that यहाँ से leak हो रहा है. So the best way to test out the product is to launch it in a beta environment within a select group of users, and that process typically should not take more than 1 2 months. This is also why 90% of the startups fail between, you know, year 1 and 3, because you'll be surprised that people are so afraid to take that product to the market. That is a nightmare for a lot of startup founders. अपने दिमाग में सोचना कि ये प्रोडक्ट अच्छा है और ये चलेगा, वर्सेस उसको सच में मार्केट में उतारना और उससे अच्छा फीडबैक लेना और कस्टमर्स की गालियां भी खाना टू अ सर्टेन एक्सटेंट. That is what it actually makes, you know, product works. And it's also good for you, because if you have a startup idea and you take it on the market initially in the initial days, you will get to know a feedback of the product and you might change your idea. So uh, you should not take ideas to your personal ego. Ideas change, ideas evolve, and kind of, you know, they pivot over a period of time. So a lot of startups, what they initially started with versus what they are right now, uske andar the delta is huge. You know, there's a huge gap. So there's a huge difference, and maybe for the good, because after a certain point of time, you have to listen to your customers and see what they want. So the good approach is to just take it out in the Indian market, and Indian market is very unique in terms of our habits, of our preferences, of our
Customs,
lifestyles. We are very
traditions.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That's an possible answer.
Yeah. Got your point. Thanks.
No problem. So, any of you is like the topic for today was problem solving and ideation. So, how did you guys come up with this idea? Like, what was in your head? What is it that you wanted to know from me? I just want to understand that. Anyone?
Yeah, I had one thing in my mind, that how do one solve case studies? Like, how do we address and structure these problems in terms of problem solving?
Case studies with respect to what? Like, are you talking from an interview point of view, or are you talking from a general life point of view? Like, because interview case studies are very different than startup life or real
Yeah,
problems.
as in startup life, how to structure a problem and then move on.
Yeah, if you plan to do your own business, okay, I'll come to the interview point of view too. So see, देखो यार, लाइफ में ना तुम्हारे को जब तुम इंटरव्यू देते हो तो तुम्हारे को ना सेट मेट्रिसेस होते हैं. तो there is Potter's 5 forces model, there is SWOT analysis, there is XYZ, there is supply chain and value chain analysis. These are all matrices that I studied in my when I was researching for my interviews. You know, consulting interviews are basically case study based. So there is first principle for problem solving. If you want me to address that, then that's a very separate discussion. But in general in life, you don't have. So startups personally don't have a like predefined path, if you know what I say, right? Every day you face new problems, and your customers usually are the people for whom you are trying to solve. So for startups, you have to put yourself in the shoes of your customer, of your user, figure out what they are facing, and sometimes they will not be able to convey. There's a very famous saying by Henry Ford that back in the years when car was not launched, if I would have asked what people wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So the idea was that people generally will tell you the problems, but that's the job of an entrepreneur to convert that problem, productize it, have a solution, make a beta product out of it, implement it with their customer base, and then figure out if it is solving their problem. So that is how ideation really happens. ऐसे अगर आपको लगता है कि एक दिन बैठ के किसी को आइडिया आता है, तो ऐसे नहीं आता. जीमेल वॉज फॉर्म्ड बिकॉज अ गाय इन गूगल was not able to. So जब आप लैपटॉप यूज करते हो तो यूजली कोडर्स यूज समथिंग कॉल्ड लिनक्स, दे डोंट यूज विंडोज, राइट? तो लिनक्स पे उस बेचारे का आउटलुक नहीं चलता था ठीक से. तो उसने बोला मेरे को एक ऐसा मेलिंग सिस्टम बनाना है जो मेरे लैपटॉप पे चल सके, एंड दैट वाज अ साइड प्रोजेक्ट व्हिच एंडेड अप बिकमिंग जीमेल, व्हिच 1.5 billion people in the world actively use on a daily basis. So sometimes the best ideas come when you're solving for yourself. That's how in general life works. But when you talk about from a case study, um, from a consulting point of view, so yeah, you have to learn to how to hack it. So usually interviews are about hacking the system, and that's what I have learned. I have had uh, you know although I have even the Nomura interview. So the idea was that in interview they want to see different things in you. They want to see when they talk about case studies, they want to see that how logically can you think, how is your analytical thinking ability. In that particular aspect, what happens is that sometimes there are three basic types of problems they might pose, even in case studies. First is the guesstimates. Guesstimates are your top to bottom, bottom to top, lateral thinking, all these kind of approaches. That if I ask you how many dosas are being made in India right now, that's a kind of guesstimate, right? How do you solve it? That's a separate sort of a discussion altogether. Then there is business profitability cases, that company X is not able to make a profit. What do you suggest? Then there is business operation cases, that uh, company A is not able to crack this particular geography. So then you have to apply segmentation and all these kind of principles. So these are the things that you can anyway read online. And for that, you didn't have to call me, because you can anyway read these. Like there's World Guide to Investment Banking, there is consulting की case study. तो अगर आप लोगों ने मेरे को interview training के लिए बुलाया, तो that's a very separate discussion, and I will be happy to do that, but on a later aspect. Today I thought that you wanted to know how to solve ideation level problems of startups, so that's a very separate topic. So these are very two separate things. So you guys decide if you want to go in that direction, then I'm happy to do that, but that's a very separate discussion on how to crack interviews, because that's what the intent I'm getting. If that is the intent, then please clarify right now. Yeah.
Yeah, basically we need to know about the ideation stage problems only. So we'd be grateful if you can elaborate on same.
एक काम करेंगे, मैं अगर आप लोगों को इंटरव्यू की प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, केस स्टडीज, आप आर यू फेसिंग अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ गिविंग केस स्टडी इंटरव्यूज फॉर योर जॉब्स? इज दैट अ रियल प्रॉब्लम दैट यू गाइस आर फेसिंग, और
So basically, we are. So basically, the main motive of this was the ideation of entrepreneurship, the startup ideation phase. And about the case study interview problem, the thing is, we are a group of first years and second years. Most of us are from first year and second year, so we haven't been into that much. But yes, we will be happy to host you for another session on guesstimates and case study.
yeah, because वो ना बहुत अलग टॉपिक है यार. मतलब that's a interview
so
training is a very different topic. मतलब I have the material,
we can
but
have another session on that.
yeah,
So for today, let's focus on the entrepreneurship ideation side of it.
Yeah, so वहाँ पे you guys ask me questions like मैंने आपको थोड़ा सा line of thought दिया है. So what is exactly you want to know? I will focus on that. Then utilize this time to ask that sort of questions right now.
Nikhil, I have a question.
बोलो.
या यू सेड अ लॉट अबाउट काउंटर इंट्यूटिव। तो अगर मेरे पास काउंटर इंट्यूटिव कोई थॉट थॉट है तो उसको मैं अपने टीम को कैसे कन्वे करूंगा, क्योंकि वो भी ट्रस्ट नहीं करेंगे, मतलब इन्वेस्टर्स को कैसे पिच करूंगा या फिर कस्टमर्स को कैसे करूंगा, तो वो कैसे मतलब कम्युनिकेशन कैसे होगा फिर?
यार सिंपल सी बात है यार, अगर आपको, लेट मी बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट विद यू एंड आई विल बी अ बिट ब्लंट, my job in the entire day is to convince people. I have to convince my investors, I have to convince my customers, I have to convince my team, I have to convince my HR to hire good people, I have to convince good people to stay in the company, I have to convince old people to stay in the company further. So the job of an entrepreneur is to give people hope and convince them. That's your job, right? So अगर आपके पास एक आइडिया है और आप खुद कन्विंस्ड हो, तो it will be very easy for you to convince your team. If you are yourself not convinced and if you can't convince the person who is working with you that यार ये आइडिया अच्छा है, तो आप भूल जाओ कि आप कस्टमर को तो कन्विंस कर पाओगे टू ट्राई इट आउट. दैट्स नॉट हाउ इट वर्क्स. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि काउंटर इंट्यूटिव आइडियाज आर मैड आइडियाज. आई एम सेइंग काउंटर इंट्यूटिव आइडियाज शुड एटलीस्ट मेक सेंस इन योर हेड. And the best way to convince people is by showing, like, just the answer to that is just do it. Just launch the product, test it out in 10 users. If you get good feedback from them, if you can get analytics, if you can see that how many people are actually using the product, what is the usage like, uh, probably your co-founder or your team member will be convinced automatically. So that's the only answer I have, because convincing is a talent that you'll have to develop over a period of time. It's a very, very important talent if you want to go for startups. You have to know how to convince people. Yeah. And if you really make sense, if it is logical, then people will be convinced even if it is counterintuitive. काउंटर का मतलब ये नहीं होता कि बेवकूफों वाला आइडिया ले आओ. काउंटर इंट्यूटिव का मतलब होता है वो आइडिया जो लोगों को लगे कि यार ये कितना बेकार आइडिया है इनिशियली, बट वंस पीपल स्टार्ट यूजिंग इट, इट बिकम्स क्वाइट इफेक्टिव. फॉर एग्जाम्पल शादी.com, लाइक अभी सबने शार्क टैंक देखा होगा. Shadi.com is a very counterintuitive idea in a society like India where marriages used to happen in a traditional way, in a setting of a temple. Now it is, people are okay posting their details online and for anonymous people to view that. So when उस टाइम पे अगर किसी ने बोला होगा कि यार मैं एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाऊंगा जहाँ लोग अपने पेरेंट्स अपने बच्चों की डिटेल्स डालेंगे और पूरी दुनिया देख सकती है, like people would have laughed at the person, but it got tested. It had some sort of a precedent in the West कि ये चलता है, and that's how it started working in India. And then due to the good internet penetration, now it's one of the most profitable companies. So that's how, that's what I mean by counterintuitive. Yeah.
Got it, Nikhil.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask कि how did you applied, back testing in your startup? Maybe I missed that part if you have already told.
यार सिंपल सी बात है यार. देखो, a lot of people usually ask that, यार, how do I find the first set of people to test my product, right? That's what your question is, right? If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be very honest with you. If you are solving a problem, the first step is to know who you are solving for, right? अगर आप एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हो और आपको यही नहीं पता दैट हु यू आर सॉल्विंग फॉर, बिकॉज दैट्स ओनली व्हेन यू विल फेस अ प्रॉब्लम कि यार मैं किसको बीटा टेस्ट के लिए बोलूं. अगर आप एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हो, लेट्स से हायरिंग की, तो हायरिंग की प्रॉब्लम बट ऑब्वियस है कि मैं अपने लिए कर रहा था, तो मेरे जैसे बहुत सारे लोग होंगे. तो सिंपली जब मैं प्रोडक्ट बनाऊंगा तो मैं अपने जैसे उन लोगों के पास जाऊंगा जो हायरिंग की सेम प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं, एंड आई विल आस्क देम टू बीटा टेस्ट. And if the product, if you are solving the right problem, then, and if they are willing to try it, even a bad version of your solution, because it gives them a slight iota of marginal utility, that means that your product is getting validated. So figuring out कि मैं कहाँ से beta users लाऊं is should be the first question. The answer will come from who you are solving the problem for. Guys, is it making what I'm saying? Is it making sense to you all?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. So that's
probably
the idea.
you tested your product on your friends, basically, maybe, if I get
I
that.
tested on other recruiters. यार सिंपल सी बात है, मेरी हायरिंग की प्रॉब्लम थी, राइट? तो मैंने रिक्रूटर्स के लिए टेस्ट किया. दूसरा, मेरे को लगा लोगों को इंटरव्यू ट्रेनिंग नहीं मिलती, तो मैंने अपने कॉलेज आया, मैंने कहा भाई तुमको इंटरव्यू की ट्रेनिंग चाहिए? तो उन्होंने बोला देंगे. मैंने कहा ये मॉड्यूल है, विल यू पे फॉर इट? पीपल सेड वी विल पे फॉर इट. सो द आइडिया वाज दैट जो लोगों को प्रॉब्लम फेस हो रही है आपको उनको ही रीच आउट करना है, और वो तभी आएगा क्योंकि वो आपको पता है, तभी तो आपने स्टार्ट किया ना प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना.
Yes, yeah.
या
Were there any hiccups in your backtesting or in your process? So, मतलब कोई experience share करना हो?
Yeah, so simply to be honest, like when you start a product journey, typically everything will fall apart. Like, uh, I mean, when you make a basic product, it will not look good. You think Facebook is looking good today, right? But when Facebook started, or you should listen to these journeys and these lectures online, you should see the UI or the interface, the user interface they had back then. And this is true with a lot of products. When Ola started, I remember I was in college back then when Ola started, and I used to book a cab. And ओला के अंदर, डिड यू नो, ओला में राइट कैंसिलेशन फीचर नहीं था बैक इन 2017. So they made an app which did not have a right cancellation feature. Uh, for the longest time, Ola did not have an online payment system. You know that. So
Yeah.
ओला में सिर्फ आप कैश से ही पे कर सकते थे. So आज की डेट में कोई बोलेगा कि यार अगर मैं एक ऐसी ऐप बना रहा हूँ जिसमें मैं कैब बुक कर सकता हूँ एंड उसके अंदर राइट कैंसिलेशन या ऑनलाइन पेमेंट फीचर नहीं है, पीपल विल लाफ, राइट? So typically what happens, there's a 90-10 rule. Please focus on the 90% of the product which actually delivers value to the users. And जो 10% features है, just forget about it. So the idea is typically you launch a product which is very half-baked, which is not good looking. Sometimes even it is pathetic. And sometimes what happens, it doesn't work also. The idea is just to get the user interested, see whether it is solving some problem for them. एंड स्लोली आपका कोड भी फटेगा, आपका प्रोडक्ट नहीं चलेगा, आपको 10 यूजर बोलेंगे कि यार क्या दे दिया, यू विल हैव टू डू रिफंड्स ऑफ योर कस्टमर्स, एंड देन slowly you start learning. So it's the evolutionary process. It is not a static concept. It is not a day का concept कि आज मैंने प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च कर दिया. So I am firm believer. I don't believe in big product launches. I don't believe in extravagance. I don't believe in कि आज के दिन मैं पूरा दुनिया बदल दूंगा इस प्रोडक्ट को लाके. This is not how it works. You launch a product, you keep building on it. It will not work. Sometimes the website will crash. Sometimes your server will run out. Sometimes 10,000 things might happen. एंड कभी कभी ये भी होता है कि 10-15 एक साथ यूजर्स आ जाते हैं, तो इनिशियली तो हमारा प्रोडक्ट फट ही जाता था. लाइक इट द वेबसाइट यूज्ड टू क्रैश इफ वी हैड large user loads. So slowly you start setting up your backend servers. You start increasing the size of it. So that's how the journey works. And sometimes like 90% of the features in our product are made by customers. I'll just give you an example, right? So for example, um, in our suitable product, it's a product where employees of a company can bring their networks together at one place, and the recruiters can hire from those networks. Got it? समझ आ गया प्रोडक्ट क्या है? कि यार अगर जैसे आप लोग 25 लोग हो, आप 1000 लोगों से सोशल मीडिया पे कनेक्टेड हो, तो आप एक बटन दबाओगे तो 1000 लोग एक जगह आ जाएंगे. तो 25,000 लोग एक जगह आ जाएंगे और एचआर उसमें से नए कैंडिडेट्स ढूंढ के आपसे इंट्रो मांग सकते हैं. दिस इज द प्रोडक्ट, वेरी सिंपल. Now what happened? One day an employee of a company said, I'm leaving. Right. So the HR called and said that, Nikhil, this person is leaving. So now I can't request intro from them. So what can I do? So then we made a system where the recruiter can mark the people as alumni and still have access to their networks and link the account with their personal ID of the employee. So this was a feature we made literally in 2 hours on the go based on customer feedback, right? So then there was collaboration कि मेरे पास candidate आ गया, I want to send a calendar invite to the candidate on the platform itself. So we built integration with Google Meet or made integration with Zoom. So these are all the kind of features that basically will happen on your on once you start working on the product. See, आज जब तक आप launch नहीं करोगे तब तक ये होगा नहीं. So startups don't happen like sitting in a cave. Once you launch it, you will get a lot of feature requests. People will give gali to you कि क्या गंदा product बनाया, and then slowly after 2 years you will realize that wow, it's an industry leader now. So that's how basically the that's what my journey has been, to be honest. Yeah, if it makes sense to you guys. I don't
Yeah,
know if it
that's
does.
great.
Yeah.
Also,
यार it's like जब आप बचपन में मम्मी पापा पूछते हैं ना कि बड़े होके क्या बनना है, so like क्या बोलते हो आप, नहीं पता होता ना. So that's how, like क्या बनाना है एग्जैक्ट प्रोडक्ट वो आपको अभी नहीं पता होगा. Once you dive into this, you start working on it. And I'll suggest you guys are in first, second year, start interning with startups. If you really want to go for entrepreneurship, do not take that leap of faith. मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा कि नौकरी छोड़ के startup करो. All I know, I advise strongly against it. It's very hard. A lot of people lie when you start a company that it is going to be good. A lot of investors lie, we are going to give you the check, and it doesn't happen like that. So intern in a good startup, understand the sector, at least do a job for at least 3 years after you graduate before you jump into entrepreneurship. Only then take that decision. Until unless you are a genius like Zuckerberg or someone else, maybe then you can